Groupthink is dangerous. Not many people want to be in a team where everybody thinks the same. Groupthink it kills innovation. I'm terrified by nothing more than people all agreeing with me.
That's where you find success in teams.
Psychological safety doesn't mean that I expose all company information to every single person.
It's about the openness and transparency around your communication of the message.
I start to feel very anxious about my decision making.
I'm not needing your thoughts or your ideas around it.
In the last couple of episodes, I've been interviewing Sam and Michelle to ask questions around psychological safety. In the first episode, we talked a lot about what psychological safety is. Brilliant episode, highly recommend you check it out. And in the last episode, we covered a little bit about why I as a business owner should care about psychological safety. With all of that stuff in mind, I wanted to take one episode to start asking questions about how do I actually start implementing psychological safety, either as a business owner or as a senior leader or executive leader in an organization. So assuming that I'm actually interested in this and this is something I really want to do, so I fully understand how that's going to level up my company, level up my team, what sorts of things should I be starting to think about, focus on, move forward with?
I think in my experience working with individuals and working with HR teams in terms of implementing an organisation-wide strategy or working with senior leaders who just want to try and implement this at with their team, there's slightly different approaches there based on the individual that we're working with or the business that we're working with. But these are the core things that we really do try and work with when we're working with people around implementing psychological safety and building that foundation and that culture. And the first one is to really start to set those expectations around people's opinions. I expect to hear your opinion. I expect that you have value to bring to this team. No one wants to be, well, not many people want to be in a team where everybody thinks the same. Groupthink it kills innovation. Groupthink is dangerous. And so I imagine most leaders want diversity in thought in the team. So set those expectations with your team that you want to hear others' opinion, that you're soliciting other people's opinion, and that is valued. And the next part of that is, how do you manage those opinions when they come forward, if they are in conflict with what you think should happen, and if they don't align with where you want to go, or they do align with you where you want to go, how do you as a leader start to accept and receive that information in a way that's respectful of people's opinions, but also setting the scene and making sure it's clear this is not about being nice. This is not about everybody's opinion matters, and it's about I am using all of this diverse thinking and opinions to help this team make the best decision to move forward. So if you set those expectations within your team, it means that you can start really being purposeful and intentional about eliciting that feedback. The key here is to not be tokenistic. Don't submit an idea, a fully formed idea, and put it on the table and say, what do people think of this? It's sort of the antithesis of what we're trying to do here. The idea is to bring the problem or the challenge or the issue or the opportunity that exists and garner everybody's insight to help make the right decision about how to go about the project or about the strategy. And so being tokenistic and asking people what they think at the end of a decision is not going to create that sense of psychological safety. So be really clear about how you're going to manage those opinions when they come forth and the expectations that you're setting with your team.
I just want to dive into something you said there, and then I'll come to you, Sam, and maybe Sam, you want to put in on this one as well. As a business owner, sometimes I do need to shift the direction of the company that it's going for whatever reason. It could be financial, could be because I see a new opportunity. So how do I really, even trying to ask this question, I'm trying to ask it in a psychologically safe way. But sometimes you do need to turn up and say, this is the direction that we need to go for reasons. So how does that work when you kind of do have that fully formed decision, because that's what you need to do? Like implementing psychological safety, you might just turn up and say, right, this is the direction that we need to go. How do I balance that need to provide direction and this is how we're going to go forward, but also making sure I'm creating a psychologically safe place for people?
I think we can have both. So think about it in this way. when the culture is that of psychological safety, this conversation would not be the hardest conversation. It would be quite easy to actually say, hey guys, we need to shift direction because of 1, 2, 3. It's about the openness and transparency around your communication of the message. And what Michelle is saying is, do not let it be tokenistic, selling it as, I want to hear your thoughts on the direction that we're taking, versus it's imperative for the business success that we take this direction because of 1, 2, 3. So what I need from you is compliance. I'm not needing your thoughts or your ideas around it, because you have a well-formed idea or opinion on where things need to be as a business owner. And sometimes there are those hard decisions to make. When you have a psychologically safe environment, that is just one of the indicators that you actually will feel okay to let the team know that we're moving in a particular direction because of ABC.
The sort of like authenticity in your approach is kind of what you're saying. So I'm not presenting, here's a fully formed decision as a, let's be psychologically safe and get your input. It's just saying, guys, girls, team, whatever, whatever phrase you want to use, this is where we need to go. Here's the reasons why. I'm really sorry. I'd love to get your thoughts, but unfortunately this time around, not going to happen.
Look, I think, James, it's really important, and this is something that where we add value when we are working with businesses or individuals in this space, is in the initial stages, those decisions are really tricky, because you're saying to yourself, not the decision to take your business this way, that's not a tricky decision. The thinking around that absolutely everything is open for consultation, and that absolutely every decision I must take it to the team, otherwise I'm not being psychologically safe. And when you're jigging a mindset or a culture, that is where we work with individuals and teams to really help them understand that not all decisions, absolutely not all decisions, need to be up for consultation, and not all decisions do you need anyone else's opinion on. And knowing the difference between a decision that needs to be thought through and knowing the difference when I have to make this decision because there's information that I have, or it's time, there's a time pressure, or there's a financial budgetary pressure. Sometimes you just have to jump without the ability to do that. I think what's important though in that piece is if you say, I'm making a decision, we are going to do X on Y, a psychologically safe team would be able to say to you, James, I don't think we can do this on Y because this is going to happen. Or have you considered that we might need to include someone else in this because of the flow-on effect? Now, you might be able to turn around and say, yeah, I did actually consider that. Thanks. I did actually consider those points when I made this decision, but we're going to head down this way. Or you might go, actually, I hadn't thought about that. So a psychologically safe team would be able to challenge the decision that you've made, and there's no ego in you being able to say, yep, no, thank you. I appreciate those points, but I'd already considered them, or I haven't considered them, but we're still going this way. I don't know if that helps answer it, that it's even if you've made a decision, some people might be able to challenge that. And we do a lot of work in healthcare, and psychological safety is really important in healthcare. And we've seen, I'm just trying to provide an example, and we've seen situations where you've had people who have amputated the wrong leg. They've gone into surgery for a leg amputation and the surgeon has amputated the wrong leg. And in the background, the nurse is saying, I knew it was the wrong leg, but I just didn't speak up. I didn't have the courage to challenge the surgeon because the surgeon's right. And so what we are working in health environments and the disability sector is to say, even no matter where you stand in the pecking order, if you feel that there's a safety issue or a decision's been made that's about to be the wrong decision, do you have a culture where people feel safe to speak up and challenge? And in that case, the doctor might go, actually, you're right, it's the wrong leg. Let's cut off the other leg. Or the doctor might go, it happens.
What's wrong leg?
It does happen. It's really not unheard of that people have the wrong piece of their body amputated. Or the doctor might be able to go, if you had a culturally safe environment, the doctor might be able to go, okay, everybody stop. Let's just go through the checks and balances that we put in place and make sure that this decision is sound. and actually it is the right leg, let's go. I don't know if that helps illustrate it, but I think sometimes that's when you know you've got a culturally safe place.
Yep. So I think in some ways that was a great answer. I think in some ways when you get to the safety thing, I know we were chuckling about the word usage that cut off the wrong leg, right leg, is it the right leg or the left leg? Yeah, those sort of word humor aside, like when you're talking about an actual safety issue though, I feel like that can be quite easy, not easy, but maybe easier to understand, because clearly that's a terrible outcome for that patient who gets impacted by getting his incorrect leg cut off. But potentially, I think where it can get a little bit more challenging is when it's not an obvious safety issue. That someone's not going to have the wrong limb cut off, or they're not going to have some sort of catastrophic physical outcome for them. So how do you, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that example that you brought up is really straightforward to conceptually consider, because the outcome is obviously wrong. Like, you should have got this leg cut off and now it's that leg. But what about when it's not so clear cut, when it's a little bit more abstract? Like, how do you start to look at those kind of scenarios and even get to the point where someone's like, hey, this was the wrong decision, how do we fix that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And so let's take that example and put it into a corporate setting.
Yep.
So you've made a decision that you're going to invest in a software that's going to cost the organisation a significant amount of money to invest in that software, and you've made the decision because you've met with the software owner and you've read up on it and it's got good reviews, and so you've made a decision that you're going to change your software across the business. But there's someone sitting there in the room that knows that software, when it was implemented in another business, there was a major disruption and it took them a very long time to get back to business as usual and they lost customers. Or that software is not compatible with the operating system that you currently have. So they're sitting there knowing that you're going to have to also update your operating system in order to implement the software, which is a huge financial risk. And so what you want that person to do, you might come into the room and say, we're going to purchase this software for whatever purpose it does, but we're going to purchase this software. I've made the decision. You want that person to go, but James, did you actually consider the fact that our operating system won't support that? Or James, maybe it's worth you looking at this other business, which has had some real challenges with it and it really interrupted their workflows and there was a disruption to their work and they lost a lot of money. Maybe you should check that first. Now, you as a business owner then have to say, just like the surgeon, let's go back and look at our decision making and make sure our decision making was robust and check out all of those things. So you might say, oh my gosh, I didn't realise, I didn't even think about the operating system. Or you might go, yeah, I already considered that and it's factored into the funding. So I don't know if that helps, but...
It does. That's a brilliant help. I don't know if they're clicking on me because I actually own a software developer.
Maybe.
But fair cop.
I wanted to add, I think it is critical that there's a common understanding of what is psychological safety and what is not. What are the behavior indicators of a team that would be psychological safety? And I do think that there are limitations. So perhaps you might think about, an example of, as a business owner, perhaps you're thinking about expanding. You might not be coming to this team who are executing XYZ to ask them about expansion, but is there psychological safety with your executive team? So it's about the level and the content and the audience, regardless of the level of where they are. It is about the culture around that group. So perhaps think about when you say, it is maybe important decision to make for the organization and the company's success. Is this team the right team to be talking about that? Because you can have, they might be, their opinions on the matter might be very limited in comparison to your co-owner, because the head investment is going to come from them and the implication, if there are going to be any negative implication. So what I'm trying to say is there are limitations in terms of there's just some content that's not really right or appropriate for that team to be thinking about. It's actually more suited for someone else. And the question is for that team, is that...
It's almost like it's saying psychological safety doesn't mean that I expose all company information to every single person.
No.
a component of this is rational. Like you said, if I want to change the company direction, then I should be talking to my senior leadership team about that and say,
It's definitely contextual. Of course, it's contextual. You don't want to be taking some decisions to that team, but I think psychological safety exists or it doesn't.
Yep.
And so then as a leader, it's your role to understand where do you need that psychological safety. It's great to have it with your team, with your direct reports, and they work with you. But if you've got to go up to a board and make a decision and there's no psychological safety in there, then that's a problem as well. So again, one of the things that we help people with at Signa Future is really navigating the complexity of implementing psychological safety and really having an understanding of the context in which you're going into and those real practical strategies that are tailored and specific to your context and your environment.
so good. I think one of the things that, as I've had the opportunity to get to know both of you more and more, you often mention, I think this is going to be really interesting to dive into from a psychological safety perspective, is diversity of thought. And I love the way that you've often framed it in other episodes and other times I've talked to you, where it's about for anybody to bring different ways of thinking, contribute their best, really building upon that CliftonStrengths rainbow. Like how does that interact with psychological safety? Like I think part of it makes sense. Like if you feel free to speak up, then you speak up, given your natural thing. But how do those two things kind of work together?
For me, how I see the alignment is it goes back to that setting the expectation. And if I put myself back in my executive role, I'm terrified by nothing more than people all agreeing with me. I get very anxious if everybody's agreeing with me.
I disagree with that.
Excellent. If I've got lots of people nodders around me, I start to feel very anxious about my decision making. And so part of that diversity of thought is really getting people getting those different perspectives. But for me, how it aligns is I set the expectation because for me, I recognize that as a leader, I don't want 5 people that think like me. There is nothing that is not going to be productive. That is not going to, it doesn't help me utilize my strengths, and it doesn't lead to success if everybody thinks like me. And so that's how I see that, is recognizing that I don't want everyone to think like me and really embracing that sense of psychological safety, because I'm overtly trying to find and trying to mine for that different voice and that diversity and opinion and perspective. I don't know if that answers your question entirely, James, but yeah.
I think also the other link is around innovation, which is one of the attributes of high-performing teams that Michelle talked about in another episode. When you think about teams that are thriving and teams that are kicking goals, they're meeting all their KPIs, their milestones, while also feeling safe at work and feeling that there's that sense of teamwork, that's where innovation thrives, and that's where you find success in teams. And that is one key element of psychological safety.
That was really good. I love that. That's so good. Well, that's the end.
Thank you.